In an elaborate, well-coordinated annual appraisal of the nation of what the government has been up to, the president yet again filled up the government scorecard, ticking what he considers his achievements against his to-do list in his annual State of the Nation address right here at the Parliament building.
Well, the president, though, had a tough balancing act, a fractious political party, an edgy deputy president, and a population hungry with expectation. Now, the speech itself, delivered in a reassuring tone, veered between two moods, combative and conciliatory, reflecting a president at a crossroad, particularly on the war on corruption.
The national atmosphere was a cocktail of hope, cynicism, and honestly, frustration. Did the president match the expectations, or did he prove his critics right?
Well, wall-to-wall coverage of the State of the Nation and all the day's happenings starts right now.
President Uhuru Kenyatta sets the stage for more exits from government.
Anyone whose case goes before court will be removed from government.
Also tonight, silent on the drought, no comfort for the hungry, no stern, decisive action on corrupt state officials.
I must say that I've been under pressure that who am I sacking?
The key issues the address did not address.
Plus, Chief Magistrate Douglas Ogoti steps aside from Samburu Governor's graft case as Lenol Kulal exits police custody.
I can assure you, we'll come out of this more stronger. The truth will come out.
NTV Tonight with Mark Masai and Smriti Vidyarthi.
We're glad you could join us tonight. David Agondo is our sign language interpreter. And to our top story and main focus, the three cabinet secretaries currently under investigations in the Aror and Kimwarer dam scandals in connection with kickbacks may soon be forced or forged out of office in investigations, if investigations, that is, find that they have a case to answer.
Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta appeared to tighten the noose on the corrupt, telling Kenyans in his State of the Nation address that any government official associated with graft will not serve in his government.
NTV's political affairs reporter Kennedy Mureithi starts us off.
This year's State of the Nation address had been waited on by Kenyans with bated breath, as many expected heads to roll in the war against graft. On the floor of the House, the President acknowledged this fact, but would only act according to the law.
That the pursuit of the corrupt will be undertaken strictly within the remits of the law. It will not be done through vigilante justice and pitchfork protest.
Currently, 3 cabinet secretaries are under active probe over their involvement in the Kimwarer and Aror dam scandal, where the DCI is investigating payments of large sums of money as kickbacks. The 3 are Treasury Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich, Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Mwangi Keunjori, and Devolution Cabinet Secretary Eugene Wamalwa.
Anyone whose case goes before court will be removed from government, and any individual will thereafter have to answer his case before a court of law.
President Kenyatta also turned the heat on the judiciary once again, accusing them of slowing the pace in the war against corruption. He also accused the judiciary of protecting their own implicated in corruption, confirming that he was forced to revoke the appointment of a judge today over graft links.
Indeed, I particularly urge the judiciary not to appear to protect their own or to allow the abuse of privilege in the case where their officials are suspected of or have been under active investigation for corruption.
The lawyers, the law firms which actually hide most of this loot in their clients' accounts, which are in themselves untouchable. So we really need to start there to ensure that the members of the judiciary themselves are clean so that they can stand in judgment against other Kenyans. But if you start with a corrupt judiciary, you cannot really expect to get proper justice in the country.
rather than wait to be arraigned in court, if you know you have been a regular visitor to these investigative agencies and there's something they are zeroing in on, why wait? Do the honorable thing and resign.
President Uhuru Kenyatta has reiterated his faith in investigative bodies as he calls on politicians to stay away from this fight on corruption. Kennedy Mureithi, NTV at Parliament Buildings.
Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta, in his 6th State of the Nation address, lived up to his reputation of being more bark than bite in the war on graft.
In fact, if anything, the president appeared keen to dispel the fears and disquiet that have destabilized the Jubilee Party. His deputy, William Ruto, and those who've aligned themselves to him having grown increasingly bolder in their attacks on the investigative agencies they claim are being used to wage war on the DP under the guise of fighting graft.
Well, even so, the president did not disappoint. True to form, the threatener-in-chief issued a stern warning to the corrupt in his ranks, but to an increasingly jaded audience. NTV's Olive Burrows with more.
I must say that I've been under pressure that who am I sacking? But no.
It was a statement of fact that many have come to expect. A commander-in-chief famed for his tough talk, but much less so for his follow-through.
Wewe kama unataka kuingiana na mambo ya ufisadi, yeah? Tutapigana na wewe. You can be my brother, you can be my sister, you can be my closest political ally, you can be whatever you are, but you are an enemy of the Republic of Kenya, and we will fight with you.
So, one need not have looked into a crystal ball to predict that while President Kenyatta would come out guns blazing against the proverbial corrupt element in his government, it would be a tall order for heads to roll as a consequence of his State of the Nation address Thursday.
That the pursuit of the corrupt will be undertaken strictly within the remits of the law. It will not be done through vigilante justice and pitchfork protests.
Political expediency appearing to have tempered the president's tough talk.
There have been attempts to profile the political war waged against William Ruto to be the war on corruption.
With the appointment of Nuruddin Haji as the Director of Public Prosecutions, there had been reason for optimism, as there had been following the President's 2015 State of the Nation address, when he suspended 4 cabinet secretaries under investigation by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. But it appears the President may have fallen back on old favourites, passing the buck for the fits and starts in the war on graft onto the judiciary.
And that is why we look up to the judiciary to do their part, to apply the law firmly and fairly.
But while he points a finger at the judiciary, he has 4 others pointing back at him, particularly considering that while he pats himself on the back for previously suspending officers charged in court, his former sports CS, Hassan Wario, remains an ambassador.
As I have said and done before, I once again undertake that anyone whose case goes before court will be removed from government, and any individual will thereafter have to answer his case before a court of law.
A case of preaching water and drinking wine? Whatever the case, the public sentiment appears to be talk is cheap, and what is needed is strong, decisive action.
Pingu! Toa pingu! 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 Iyo!
Olive Burrows, NTV.
The president's speech was, to be exact, an hour and 3 minutes long.
But what took up the bulk of the 63 minutes, and what did he obviously miss?
Olive Burrows is in studio to break it down.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Smriti. Now let's take a more comprehensive look at the highlights of his speech.
Obviously, given the stories we've run for you, corruption and the efforts towards tackling it took up a bit of the president's time. He says for the first time, the net had been widened to target even the big fish, including governors and cabinet secretaries. He was expected to announce drastic actions against ministers and other public officials implicated in graft. Now, we know that that did not happen. So there it is. You can see it on your screen. Corruption took up quite a bit of time in the president's State of the Nation address. Apart from corruption, obviously, there is, of course, the Big Four agenda on which President Uhuru Kenyatta hinges his legacy. It was allocated a big portion of his time. For more than 5 minutes, he extolled the progress achieved so far, particularly in the energy, manufacturing and transport sectors. He touched on the flagship SGR project, but he fails to mention how it will push up the national debt that now stands at 5.3 trillion shillings. Devolution was another big one. The president reiterated his government's support for devolution. That support exemplified by the 1.7 trillion shillings disbursed to the counties since 2013. And there's, of course, not forgetting the handshake. The unity agenda, and by that I mean the Building Bridges initiative, was also key in his address. The president called for inclusivity that transcends sectarian, religious and partisan politics. As for the economy, it was also on the president's radar, glorifying the 6.1% growth in the last year and a projected 6.3% this year. Linked to the economy is agriculture. The president also listed plans to improve irrigation agriculture, measures to revive and support coffee farming, improve the fortunes of maize farmers, and value addition to other agricultural sectors. But what was missing? What was obviously missing in his speech was the issue of the prevailing drought and the lives it has claimed. The president did not spare even a minute of the 1-hour speech to tell the country what his government intends to do to address this issue. And with that, I hand you back to Mark and Smriti.
All right. Olive, thanks very much for that. Interesting to actually break down the numbers and the time to note how long the president actually spent on certain issues.
That's right. And then another observation by many is that it almost seems almost like a copy-paste of the previous one, because I mean, the themes that were visited were more or less the same. It's just the figures that would change, of course, given a year and what has happened, especially when he was looking at the economy and also some of the progress that has been made in terms of the SGR infrastructure project that has been a big, bragging point for the Jubilee government. But yes, a lot more to talk through and about this and get reactions from Kenyans and other legislators in a bit.
That's right, Mark. You will have your guests right here coming to us live from the Parliament building. But for a moment, we take a breather from the State of the Nation address and turn our attention to a few other stories making headlines today. And one of those is that thousands of jobless graduates in the country who write academic papers for students in developed countries may soon be rendered jobless again.
That's right. The UK government has launched an operation targeting essay mills with online money transfer service PayPal, announcing that it is withdrawing services to essay writing firms that serve university students.
NTV's Silas Apollo has the details.
PayPal, which is so far the most popular method of processing payments by the essay mills, announced it will contact the companies starting from next week, informing them of its intention to stop the payments. The companies say that the move will help ensure that the platform is not used to facilitate deceptive and fraudulent processes in education. Essay companies rely heavily on payment platforms to process orders and payments for those who do the academic writing. And now, the British government is said to be piling pressure on other payment platforms to withdraw their services as well. Reports indicate that 40 vice-chancellors of UK universities have also asked internet searching giant Google and YouTube to shut their services to the essay writing companies as well. Additionally, a parliamentary petition is underway in London to have the essay mills banned from UK's internet space. Should this happen, the ripple effect by other developed countries could adversely affect thousands of youths in Kenya engaged in the business, valued at $1 billion globally, according to Forbes.
So I wouldn't subject those who are doing it, because some of them, through writing, doing dissertation, doing assignments for other people, that's how they pay their bills and they manage themselves outside there.
Kenya has been listed by the UK as the leading black market for academic cheating by its students. This is because the country currently lacks the law preventing Kenyans from doing research work for students in other countries. Thousands of jobless graduates have turned the essay industry into a full-time income-generating activity by working from home or in shared offices. The cost of research papers range from 30,000 shillings to 50,000 shillings. A PhD thesis can cost upwards of 200,000 shillings, while doctorate candidates pay 264,000 shillings for dissertation. An expose by the Daily Nation this week showed that the practice has also crept into the Kenyan education system, where students pay to have their master's and PhD dissertations done at a fee. Silas Apollo, NTV.
And yes, as promised, we'll have reactions from legislators who were in the parliamentary building when this address was being made by the president. The 6,782-word document, just over an hour to deliver. And in this panel, I have Rarieda Member of Parliament, that is Otiende Amolo, as well as the Senate Majority Leader, Kipchumba Murkomen. And he's been called the junior senator, I don't know why, by Murkomen, but yes, Mutula Kilonzo Jr., the senator for Makueni. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening. I'll start with initial reactions to that speech. What stood out for you, Otiende?
Well, I think the speech was largely balanced. There are a few areas that could have been covered but were not covered. There are one or two areas which I probably do not agree with the approach that the president gave it. But it should be understood, one, that the State of the Nation address, what it is to cover is already stipulated in the Constitution, Article 132, which draws you to Article 10. So there's a sense of repetition that Kenyans must be used to. Okay. What will always vary is the depth, detail, and format of it. Secondly, I think it stood out in the sense that the president tried to balance between those who have criticized him in certain areas, including corruption, in terms of the approach, and giving the assurances of continuity in the war of corruption, in support of the BBI initiative, and similar matters. So I think it was more or less balanced.
All right, and it touched on some of the things you've been very vocal on, Murkomen. What was your take on this?
First of all, I think just to agree with Tiende is that people must, I see many people trying to fault the president for repeating certain things, because State of the Nation address is a repetition of what you've said for the whole year. It's an account of what has been happening in the country, the current state of affairs in the country, sum total of what has been happening in that particular year. And for me, I think President's speech was fantastic. What I liked most about his presentation is that, you know, a head of state is not just, is not supposed to just lead the country in terms of what needs to do, but to inspire that nation.
All right.
Now, recently, there's been a lot of conversation as though if you looked at our newspapers, media houses, every conversation has been very negative to the extent that everybody thinks that this country is going to the dogs. But the president has said, one, this country is held in terms of security. He's talked about infrastructure, the number of accounted for a number of roads. He talked about our country being the leading country in the region, in the continent actually, and almost the top 6 countries in the world that uses green energy. You know, 85% of our energy is from green energy.
Yes.
So if you look at the president, he's taking Kenyans back to what is really supposed to be discussion about the issues, how much the economy is growing, unemployment-related issues, yes, food security-related issues, so that although we have a fight, and he concluded with it, that we are saying we want to fight corruption, we want to build the country to unite, Kenyans must not forget that there are many other integral issues that are expected of government, right, and that government must account for what has been doing. And that's why in our new constitutional dispensation now, 6-7 years down the line, a new government, 7 years, but the constitution is about 9 years.
Okay.
We have an opportunity to every year account for everything that is necessary for this country to be healthy.
And you've said we've been negative, that is the media in terms of the coverage and the headlining stories, but even in his speech he did term corruption, which he saved for last, as the corruption jigger. So it is bad, and come on, Nimbaya. Over to just the initial reactions. I just need to get something also from Mutula Kilonzo. A fantastic speech in your view?
Well, I'm beginning to wonder myself whether or not we don't have either too much expectation, or we are not sure what we wanted from the speech itself. But first, I think the president attempted in a very clever way to balance the political situation in Kenya. So the state of the nation included the political situation. Those who were seated inside like me, people were thumping their feet depending on which side of the speech they liked. But I'm beginning to wonder, if you look at the framework of Article 132, that the president has 1 day in a year to come to Parliament, whether in fact we ought as Parliament to start defining what he should report on. Okay. Because in 1 hour, I'm not quite sure, personally, whether the president has reported the state of the nation. Right. Whether the public have understood what the status of the nation is. Because you might have 6.3 growth, but how does that translate to the common man? For the economists, that sounds very good. For the gurus who sit on treasury, those sort of things, they make good writings. But what is it meant to be? How is it supposed to address that person who tomorrow morning, when they wake up and have a discussion in a small place, in Tomboya Street, what are they supposed to be discussing other than they were waiting for somebody to be thrown out of office or something like that? I think that the State of the Nation address must, by and large, address all those aspects that Otienda Molo is talking about in Article 10. If we need the president to take a break and speak for 3 hours, he should. But I think all those items, must have a page, because it is required that you will give a report, and the details will come in the Kenya Gazette.
So in your view, was it a fail, or it wasn't exhaustive?
It wasn't exhaustive.
Okay.
It wasn't exhaustive for purposes of that every person, every other Kenyan was watching him. The details, even if they come through the Kenya Gazette, most of them will never get to see the details.
And some of the things,
that is what bothers me.
Some of the things that you feel are not exhaustive or not addressed, you could bring up in this conversation. But first, just reaction to something you brought up, and you said this is envisioned in the Constitution, is provided for. It's actually the issue of repetition shouldn't be brought up. That question of how exhaustive it can be, can that be addressed, can that be changed, or it's what we have and that's what we take?
Yes, it's an interesting matter, and sometimes a delicate one. Because first, as Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. is saying, we in the House are a microcosm of what's out there. The divisions out there are as alive in the House as they are out there. And so there's almost a sense in which the president also has to try and walk a line in which it does not appear that a section of parliament is either booing him, which is not quite allowed because we must listen in silence, or appears not to appreciate. So there's a sense in which I think the president tries not to say things that would be so fundamental, in that house, things that he might otherwise say outside the house.
Right.
So I kind of sympathize with that. But having said that, the idea of the president coming to address parliament, he's not just addressing members of parliament.
All right.
He's addressing the nation through parliament, because there is no forum where he can get all the Kenyans to address them. And so, to that extent, Senator Mutula Kilonzo is right in the sense that every Kenyan wants to see or hear their issues. But Kenyans have so many issues that even if you took 1 week, you will never be able to address them. So that must also be balanced. But two, there's also a sense in which Kenyans wanted blood. They wanted to see blood.
Heads to roll as well.
They wanted heads to roll. In fact, the president himself acknowledged it. But part of that is because he himself set that pace. In 2015, in an address to parliament, he actually said the heads to roll.
Right.
So people kind of got to expect that when you hear the president, heads can roll. And so I kind of understand that.
Yes.
Yes.
And he went into something or alluded into something that if a state officer is actually charged, then that means they would be asked to step aside. Perhaps there's some undertones, and because you're all legal minds, you'll help us get into that. Because there's actually a governor who is in an active case right now, and there are questions around it. You brought it up in Senate yesterday, Mr. Mutula. We will be addressing that in terms of the void that is in law to address such issues if a whole governor is facing charges, and if he's expected to step aside, what that means for the county. We'll be back with that and much more. There's a handshake, then there's a corruption that was given a good amount of time in terms of the issues that he addressed, as well as the Big Four. But many asking, he didn't quite talk about the food security or insecurity that we're facing at the moment. So we'll look into that when we get back. Stay with us. President Uhuru Kenyatta has renewed his commitment to the handshake by allocating 10 billion shillings towards the Building Bridges initiative. The president, who was continuously praised by legislators allied to the opposition during his State of the Nation address in Parliament, vowed to use the initiative towards uniting the country amid opposition from politicians allied to Deputy President William Ruto. NTV's Seth Olale also highlights memorable occasions before, during and after the event.
Parliament Road was in complete shutdown more than 12 hours before President Uhuru Kenyatta arrived at Parliament buildings for his State of the Nation address. Security around and inside Parliament buildings was beefed up by regular police, military police and GSU's elite Reke Squad officers. The Kenya Army rehearsed at least 2 times before mounting the Guard of Honor backed by its band. National Youth Service officers played a big role in cleaning the entire venue, with military personnel repeatedly polishing the president's podium. National Assembly Speaker Justin Muturi and his Senate counterpart Kenneth Lusaka arrived way early as other dignitaries, including Chief Justice David Maraga, arrived for the annual address attended by both houses. Deputy President William Ruto opted to walk from his Harambee Annex office to Parliament buildings to receive the president. But it was the arrival of ODM leader Raila Odinga and his ANC opposition counterparts Kalonzo Musyoka, Musalia Mudavadi and Moses Wetangula that signaled an extended cooperation between the president and members of the opposition barely 2 days after they launched the government's Huduma number initiative at various locations countrywide.
Kenneth Lusaka.
The president pledged commitment towards his handshake with Raila Odinga by announcing that 10 billion shillings will be set aside for the Building Bridges initiative, targeting politically marginalized areas in order to bury historical injustices.
It has been and it remains an urgent agenda of mine to bring harmony, unity, and civility to the political landscape and discourse in this country. And that is what informed the Building Bridges initiative, commonly known as the handshake.
This in complete contrast to the president's address to the nation in 2016, when he was heckled by protesting opposition legislators who used whistles.
You are not required to demonstrate as you withdraw from the chamber. You know the standing orders.
The president's commitment towards the handshake was lauded by opposition leaders led by Raila Odinga.
Indeed, our handshake has been followed by millions of handshakes across the length and breadth of the Republic. Many leaders across the country and at every level of government have opted for a renewed politics of unity. And this has given Kenya a new and stable platform upon which we can rise above individual and sectarian interests, religious divide.
Today's national address is the second since President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga's handshake outside Harambee House on March 9th, 2018. Following the State of the Nation address from President Uhuru Kenyatta, Kenyans hope that what was said inside Parliament will be implemented in the coming days in order to improve the livelihoods of Kenyans. Seth Olale, NTV Parliament Building.
And captured there in Seth Olale's story, indeed, is that on the matter of the handshake, that we are not turning back, the words of the president, on uniting the country. We have chosen the hard road of building unity and cohesion against the easy road of division. We are greater people for it. Let me put this to one of the panelists who spoke, or at least made his thoughts known about this issue. On March 9th, Bona Murkomen, you tweeted out and you say, handshake in capital letters is the worst political fraud ever witnessed in this country. It's being used as a scheme to fight one individual together with the charade called Fight Against Corruption. It's a shame. Do you still stand by those words?
Yes, I stand by those very serious words. First of all, let me start by saying that the President spoke today very well on a theme that is called no turning back. No turning back to, so many things. I think if you were to put a heading to the speech, it would be called no turning back, because he talked about no turning back on matters of corruption, on matters of uniting the country, on devolution and so forth.
That is true. Now, on this matter
so
on
it
handshake,
wasn't on just one that issue.
Yes. Why you refer to it as the worst political fraud
Number two is that, as I have argued before, the President has the greatest intention for the nation insofar as uniting this country. And that intention is represented by his words and commitment, not only to Jubilee leadership, but also to the opposition led by Honorable Raila Odinga. Unfortunately, the reality on the ground is that it's become a political fraud. And I have 4 things to say about it. Number one is that since the handshake took place, we've been told at the highest level of ODM by none other than Deputy Party Leader, Honorable Governor of Mombasa, Ali Joho,
yes,
that the former Prime Minister told them they can only deal with the President but must attack the Deputy President. Those words were uttered publicly in Busia. Number 2 is that Honorable Aisha Jumwa has been punished to the highest level, presided over by the former Prime Minister, for our association with the Deputy President. Our only crime was to work and associate with the Deputy President. Number 3 is that in every public function, number 3 first is that you can see that ODM is sponsoring and planning to sponsor impeachment, not at a very low level, at the level of the leader of minority in the Senate, in the person of James Orengo. And when James Orengo speaks, you know who has spoken, Not just that they share the same county with the former Prime Minister, but also that he is his closest confidant. And the last thing is that if you see in all public engagements, one side of the partnership, and I can't blame Mutula here. Mutula is innocent and clean, and his side is innocent. There's only one political party, the ODM, which is led by the former Prime Minister, which has consistently worked to fight Deputy President and to tell us that this building initiative is just to deal with one individual. Now, for it to show clearly to the country that our friends in the ODM have never appreciated this important factor of uniting the country, if you see what the President said today, he said the handshake was not about him and the former Prime Minister alone. He said it must cascade to many millions of Kenyans.
Okay.
Now, the fraud here is that on one hand, the one side of the handshake, which is the President, believes that it's about uniting the country. The other side, which is the former Prime Minister and his team, believes it's about dividing the country.
All right, let's give a chance to Raria, the Member of Parliament. First, you say Mutula is not innocent on this matter. Otiende, respond to this. And you have actually 4 points.
I understand to mean that I'm guilty.
Yes, go ahead. You have 4 points equally to respond.
I've not said anything. I've not committed any crime.
Innocent,
but
yes.
First, I like the fact that the President spoke so strongly about the BBI initiative and repeated it and said there's no going back. And also, the fact that the President acknowledged the problem of corruption, and we'll talk about it shortly. I think Senator Murkomen is living a lie on this matter, unfortunately. You cannot be the leader of majority in the Senate when by happenstance, the majority in the Senate are also the party that is in leadership of the executive and therefore the country. When the President, who is the leader, therefore, of that party comes to a joint sitting and tells the nation that I stand by BBI and there's no going back, and then you come and criticize that, it means you're actually criticizing the leader of your party. It means that either you have lost trust in that leadership, in which case you should either ask them to resign or you resign, or it means you do not believe in that. First of all, you cannot talk about the Building Bridges initiative without talking about the President. Why? One, the Gazette notice that creates the team is signed only by one person, the President of the Republic. It is not signed by Raila Amolo Odinga. Two, the address to Parliament is made only by one person, the President not the Right Honorable Prime Minister. So where the Raila comes in this question, when your question is very clear on BBI and what the president said, I don't understand. Right. I think it's scapegoating. Right. It is also important to understand that you don't bring all these other issues. Issues of BBI are very clear. The team has not spoken on anything. When Senator Rengo spoke about the views in terms of impeachment, first he said, and he made it very clear in an interview, that those were his views. They were not Raila Amolo Odinga's views. Secondly, he was speaking of an intention. No motion has been brought on impeachment. Thirdly, he was not speaking for the BBI team. Yes. So unless you have something that is under the table that you're not able to bring to the table to attack the BBI team, I don't see where the correlation with Orengo, with Raila comes in, because we must await the report. And even the president today said that he's eagerly awaiting the report of the BBI team. On it. I, for one, is awaiting that report, because I think a lot of the conversation should start once we receive it. Yeah. Right. Unless one fears that in that report there might be things that are unpalatable. Okay. Well, I don't know.
I think
quick response and then Mutula. Yes.
I think Atiende chose to answer his own question. We were not discussing the Building Bridges initiative in terms of the committee that is collecting views. That is neither here nor there. It's actually being chaired by my colleagues in the Senate, and yes, we have no doubt why we should second guess them. We are talking about handshake as a concept, and you can see Atiende Omola has not controverted any of my statements. He has not actually disagreed with any of the things I raised, that their party leadership at the top believes that on one side of the political divide, we should be talking to the president but attacking the deputy president. And I say that is a fraud, political fraud. And I stand by it, and I'll stand by it until the day, Mr. Masai, this country, Kalonzo Musyoka, Musila, wrote in a book that we went to with Mutula when he was launching, our former colleague David Musila, talked about the biggest problem of this country is political deceit and political betrayal. Political deceit in the sense that you have people who, on the face of it, they have come to the fore, ostensibly, to perpetuate unity of the country. Okay. But on the other hand, they have no intentions in their actions and behaviors that they want to unite the country. Let me tell you something. I have said it here, and I will repeat. President Uhuru Kenyatta means every sentence he has said about uniting this country. And why do I believe that he means it? Because since he held hands with the deputy president in 2013, 2012, before the elections, they have done things that are visible. They have dealt with the issue of post-election violence and reparations and addressing concerns.
And you don't believe the sincerity of the partner in this particular handshake?
They dealt with the issue of squatters that are supposed to be resettled. They have united this country. President Uhuru Kenyatta was building on a foundation that they started with the deputy president to extend to the opposition, work together. Unfortunately, his partners have come with a lot of deceit, and I stand by it.
And they're not sincere, in your view.
Yeah.
Well, do you ascribe to that view that it is being used, this whole issue, to fight one individual, this whole scheme, to fight one individual?
No, I personally think that the handshake is misunderstood. Whether it's misunderstood deliberately from the position of the president and the former prime minister is another question altogether. I also think that part of the problem is that there exists extreme mistrust in the Jubilee coalition, that even if it wasn't Raila, they will still be complaining about somebody, a third party in the bedroom or something. The point is that it had the concept of what it was supposed to achieve has not quite percolated well. First amongst the political leadership, two amongst even the team itself. I've said this before, that the team that is doing the BBI is working very quietly. For some strange reason, they want to operate off radar. Okay. If you're going to build bridges, you can't build bridges in the country as if you're walking in the dark, like the way we are doing this interview in the dark. You can't do that. Otherwise, the bridge will never be seen. For you to unite the country must be with you. You must walk with them. And therefore then, Murkomen will not feel that at some point during the journey towards the bridge, you're building a bridge while you're walking, you're making sure that you're breaking the back. There's a concept about pulling the ladder. There's that concept of pulling the ladder, that you're pulling the ladder on everybody.
All right.
Murkomen believes that in the arrangement that they had in Jubilee, where Ruto was supposed to take after 10 years, it's being circumvented, circumlocuted, or circuited by Raila Odinga. In politics, anything goes. But the point is, when I was talking about my concern about his address, Uhuru's address is in April 2019. The report comes in between. Otiende Amolo says the person who gazetted this team is Uhuru. Now, when they finish, somewhere in the middle of this year, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to wait for the next address so that he brings the document?
Right.
How is the president then going to involve us? Because he can only involve parliament when he brings the document here. I would have, if I was sitting to advise, I would have told the president to wait until the Building Bridges Initiative completes, whether it's an interim report or any report, and bring it to the House for purposes of discussion. The discussion that Otiende Omolo is talking about is a legal discussion. It's not about succession. We will never discuss succession in the Building Bridges as to who is going to become president. No, that's not our business.
All right.
But we will discuss what are those issues in the 9 concepts they have drafted, that we can either make legislative changes, we can make constitutional changes, others are behavioral changes like corruption, those sort of things. How do we make progress?
Okay.
But more importantly, how are we going to build a bridge so that in 2022 we don't have the problem we had in 2017? The initial purpose is not for all time. We are not looking too much into the future. We are looking first at 2022. If the bridge does not get to 2022, then it's not a bridge. We are building something else.
Let me
a little bit.
Really quick, because we need to get into the corruption.
I think we are in a
from what he said, from what he raised about, to be fair to,
that's true. I think we are in there's something very important that Mutula is raising. There is a conversation in the public that, we are not thinking about 2022. But the first test of whether or not we have built a united country is 2022.
Okay.
And no, you just complete that.
Yes.
If we are building a case for political disintegration, and rolling back, the processes that we are moving towards uniting the country, breaking political parties, breaking relationships that were there, creating political mistrust, it will be counterproductive for us to lie to ourselves that because of this period of lull, we haven't addressed the issues that made us deeply divided, that we will walk groping in the dark, hoping that we will never think about 2022, but then 2022 will sort itself, even though the signs, you can tell when it's about to rain. If you can see already that there's clouds, there's thunderstorms, you must be able to say, hey, wait a minute, we need to address these issues.
Okay, you made your point. Let him respond because you raised some issues there.
Senator Murkomen has spoken twice on this, surprisingly, and started by saying I answered my own question, which is very interesting. First of all, it should be remembered, and it might help Senator Murkomen to remember, that the handshake was an event. Just like the president said, there have been many handshakes subsequently. In fact, everyone has shaken everyone's hand. What is important is that that event then crystallized into the document and the initiative called the Building Bridges Initiative.
Yes.
And therefore, in discussion, in learned and serious discussion, we can't talk about the event. We must talk about the product of that event. And so, Senator Murkomen, if he wants to stay with the event, that's unfortunate because we all moved from there. We are now with the product of that event, which is BBI as gazetted.
Yes.
Now, on this one, I agree with Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr., and I've said this before. There are 2 things that we learned when we were writing the Constitution. The first thing we learned is that if you want anything to be supported by Kenyans and to be carried by Kenyans, keep them along at every stage so that they know what you are doing, how you are doing it, so that when you come to the conclusion, it does not look like a conclusion that is fished from some basket.
Yes.
The second thing is time. Everything can only happen if it's the right time. And if you lose that time, that constitutional moment, then you can't do it.
Okay.
And I'm afraid we might lose that. The last point is this. I had prodded Senator Murkomen, and I was hoping that he would actually finally tell us in this show why really they're opposed to the BBI, which is the product of the handshake.
Okay.
He hasn't. He has gone around everything else except say that. So I will now postulate as to possibly why they're uncomfortable. I suspect that Senator Murkomen and those with him are uncomfortable with the BBI, which is the product of the handshake, because they suddenly realize that we might actually fix some things that have been ailing us for some time, including illegitimate elections.
Right.
And if that is done, they fear the assured platform of their preferred presidential candidate is no longer assured. That is my suspicion.
All right.
Mark, I think we don't...
That's a suspicion.
Yeah,
that's a key word.
Actually,
we need to get into corruption.
What Otieno Molo is trying to do is to just perpetuate what I told you earlier, that there is one side of the political divide that is suspecting, imagining, planning, profiling a certain side of the rest of Kenya to think that, in fact, from the day one, you would hear them, and most of the time ODM says there's a side that doesn't support BBI, there's a side that doesn't do this.
Yes.
I don't believe. I think it's politically dishonest for Otieno Molo to say the product of handshake was BBI. The product of handshake is broader, is bigger. It is politically bigger than BBI. BBI is just an entity, an institution there. A lot is happening and has been happening that is a product of that handshake. And even you, Mark Masai, and anybody in this country to tell us that the only product of BBI is Senator Haji and Senator Amos Wako's work is not true. The reality is that a lot of political action is taking place among the things that are raised about what is going on in the country. And let me just add by saying that if you say these elements, the things that are beginning to emerge, is that the main conversation in this country related to handshake is that, if you hear everywhere, is that it's going to break Jubilee. And the conversation around the country now is that, oh, Jubilee is broken because of this. You can't tell me that is the work of BBI as a secretariat or as an entity collecting views.
Right.
So I am saying this. President Uhuru Kenyatta, in his resolve and belief in uniting this country, has spoken fantastic today, and he has done so every day. But there is danger, the danger is in the relationship that he has with the person he has the relationship, because it threatens to roll back everything that has been done right for
really
this
quick,
country.
your third bite, as you say, we don't want to be stuck up on this. We need to get into the
let me just, as Otieno Molo postulates, to say that although it appears, just from prima facie, just looking at it, as if the main person who is being attacked in the BBI or the initiative is Deputy President Ruto. The reality is that when you see him walking around, he says, I'm around, I'm going nowhere.
Okay.
He appears confident. So what is all this noise about? Because first and foremost, everybody appreciates that the level of political tension in 2017, 2018, and now it's sort of helped this country move forward.
Yes.
At the expense, of course, of looking as if all of us are one. There's no opposition. All of us go. We are everywhere. You don't know where everybody's going. The point is, I sometimes believe that the political machismo of the likes of Murkomen is to paint a picture of victim. I've just said the person who he appears to be under attack is very confident, but his foot soldiers appear to create victimization in it as just a way of, I think it's political machination, because as Otieno Molo says, if we lose this moment, assuming this is a moment where we need to sit as a country and build some consensus as to whether or not we need to achieve certain minimal things before the next general election, constitutional or otherwise, we might lose this moment.
Okay.
And in the losing of that moment, you will never find it again unless people fight. And that is what you want to avoid.
And let's not lose the opportunity to talk about something that he spent a good amount of time addressing, that is corruption. And part of what he said in this regard was that 7 current and former governors and over 30 CEOs of state corporations are under active investigation or prosecution for various corruption-related offenses. In several cases, banks and other institutions have been fined for breach of regulatory duty. Many people, as you say, were looking or waiting for blood or for heads to roll. That hasn't happened, but it did say something that some might say is quite telling, that if indeed a state official or public officer is arraigned, then they would be asked to step aside. And in this case, there's some concern as to how this is addressed. Well, we have the issue of, and you two have been going at it, Kimwarer and Aror Dam, Dwake Dam, and the politicization of it all. But let's use that as an example. For instance, if someone is found culpable or is charged and asked to step aside, in your view as a senator and as a legal mind, do you have concerns?
The only concern is for those people occupying executive positions. Insofar as the ones, chief officers, cabinet secretaries, it's automatic that they must leave office. The problem comes when you charge governors, deputy governors. Like in the case of Samburu, the entire government is in court. And then a court issues an order, like it issued in the case of Obado. Don't go to your office, don't step into your county, stay in another county. What is supposed to happen to that county? Okay. To the extent that you begin to wonder whether the courts sometimes are issuing orders that cannot be effected. The point you are making is this: if a governor is accused of corruption or an executive, in an executive position, goes back to the office, has been given the statement of witnesses. The witnesses are people who work under him. The documents are the ones in his office or departments under him. And he goes back to that office. What are the chances that that governor or that chief executive officer, or in the case of the National Land Commission, computers will not disappear, documents will not disappear, witnesses will not disappear or count? Those are the concerns.
Yes.
So that while you are trying to address corruption and you are trying to make sure that you expedite these cases, there are some bottlenecks that we must as a country start thinking about. Otherwise, by the time it's 2022 and 26 governors are out of office, we'll be looking for them in the Isle of Man, Cayman Islands, or some small little place that still has no name.
And in your submissions, at least in Senate yesterday, you said that this would bring a constitutional crisis in your view. This example, would you share the same?
It's an interesting subject. But Mark, let me start by saying what actually I understood the president to be saying about corruption.
Yes.
First, he acknowledged that we have a problem of corruption in all our institutions and basically in all the arms of government, which is true. Okay? And we need to acknowledge that. Yes. Secondly, I think he balanced the fears of Senator Murkomen and his groups, because a lot of them, and I will tell you why I think they celebrated. In Parliament, I saw those who celebrated, they feared that some people would be named and dropped today, and they feared that a substantial number might be their friends. So the president avoided doing that. But on the other hand, he also answered what they have been saying for some time, and there are two things. One, the allegation that the fight against corruption has been tribalized. He said that corruption has no religion, has no tribe, has no such thing. Secondly, there are attacks on some of the institutions that deal with corruption, the DCI, the DPP. He urged all of us to support those institutions. So he answered them, but also pacified them.
Yes.
And so let me address the question of that pacification. Is it true, as the president said, that he prefers to follow due process? And that if then you are charged, then you will be forced to leave office? The first statement about that, as Senator Mtula Kilonzo says, that can only apply to officers in the executive. So far, there's no legal framework to make any governors or any members of parliament leave office. Even as we speak, a number of our colleagues are in court.
Yes.
And there's no framework to make them leave. So it is restricted. That's number one.
Unless proven guilty.
Yes. Number two, that statement is not entirely consistent, and his speech writers need to examine this. When the president says that he wants to follow due process and therefore he cannot remove anybody from office until you are charged, but when you are charged, then you will be removed from office, that is not due process, because the process of the law presumes you are innocent until proven guilty. Yeah. So if you then go that way, you will actually have to wait to the end.
Until they appeal.
But thirdly, and more importantly, and for me this is the most important thing, unfortunately I do not agree with the president that he cannot remove certain people from office, especially cabinet secretaries, principal secretaries, chief administrative secretaries, until they have been charged. Why? Because there a distinction must be drawn between integrity and accountability. Accountability is being accountable for your actions and omissions, and one of them is by being taken to court. You are taken to court as a criminal process to prove whether you are guilty of a crime or not. You are not taken to court to test your integrity. No. Integrity can be tested without you going to court. As a matter of fact, our intelligence agencies know a lot of things about a lot of people. They cannot prove them in court. Okay. But the president would have access to them. The point is, nothing stops the president from removing any CS, any PS, any CAS, even before they are taken to court. Okay. Because that is, they serve at the discretion of the president. So the idea of saying there are certain people who he believes, and he himself has told us.
So is he playing safe, managing
He himself
the
has
situation?
told us that there's rot in the cabinet, which means he has the dossiers. He need not wait for them to be taken to court because the DPP is satisfied. Let that be a different process. Right now, the president can even decide to clear house or to remove some for reasons only he knows. Okay. So that is the one bit in which I do not agree.
So it's not just to be argued in the remits of the law. Your response, more comment to
first of all,
that statement.
I think as a nation, we must face the facts. Corruption is not a fiction, it's a fact that we are facing as a country. And the president today said that we can't fight corruption through corrupt means. In other words, that we must do everything to ensure that we deal with corruption, but we must follow due process of law. I like the way the president even went further to say that we must stop this vigilante justice mentality. Let me tell you something. Everybody, there's nothing new that the president talked about when he talked about rule of law. It is what everybody knows. Former Prime Minister, when he was told to step aside because of kazi kwa vijana, said that unless somebody is proven in court, I'm not going anywhere. Former Minister Mudavadi, when he was charged on the cemetery issue, even went ahead and said that he was mad with the EACC, the Anti-Corruption Commission then, for leaking information. Senator Orengo in court 2 weeks ago actually went even ahead of accusing the DCI of being a busybody and talked about the need to protect people's reputation when even you are doing investigations. So what the president has said is not new. It's what he has always said from the beginning. Remember, Mark, that in 2012, opponents of the president and the deputy president went to court to bar them from standing for presidency because they were facing charges in ICC. And were it not for our strong constitution, President Uhuru Kenyatta would not be in office today. So it's not lost on him that rule of law is so important because there are people who can be victimized. Number two, the president has even gone public to argue that in 2015, he was made to issue names in parliament about senior government officials, including cabinet secretaries, who eventually have never been charged up to today. Okay. So it is important for us to say that we must fight corruption, but fight through the rule of law. Yes, now let me address something that Atiende has talked about. It's important. I mean, two people have raised the issues that I am supposed to respond to.
Really quick, because we also have the constitution of time here.
I have said, and I continue to emphasize, as long as DCI will carry out its responsibility in a manner that will show to the country that either is doing targeted, tribal, targeted investigations, either on projects because they are a certain region, or individuals who are holding office because they are associated to a certain person or certain tribe, we must call him out. And Kenyans must thank some of us who have the courage to to call out the DCI, because it's not most of these members of parliament cannot, because if you have something in your closet that you fear the DCI will come for you, you will not be able to raise it.
Is it calling out the DCI or protecting your own, though?
No, we must call them out. And let me tell you something.
Is it just protecting your own, or is it calling out the DCI?
It is
you make
calling
it sound
out
like it's
the
on the
DCI,
national interest.
and I stand by that. And I stand by that, Mark.
Okay.
There is nothing to do with being on your own. The Deputy Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya, Umorengo, used the opportunity in court to call out the DCI. He's not from my tribe. And so the point we must talk as a nation, we must appreciate as a nation that if we don't build a country that is founded on rule of law, tomorrow when you are not in that position of authority, you'll not be able to stand out and live in a country that is based on freedom.
Right.
So I am glad that today the president has acknowledged what we all know, that we must fight corruption, but also that we cannot fight it like we are dealing with vigilante justice. We must use the rule of law.
Okay, probably you are, as he says, glad that no heads rolled, but that's what he said.
No, let me just point out on the rolling of ministers. Oh, sorry, I wanted to agree with my colleagues on something.
Yes.
The president does not need any consultation with anybody to fire a cabinet secretary or a PS or a chief administrative secretary. In fact, governors also don't need the permission of anybody to remove their CECs and so forth. What is only not possible in law, in the same case I talked about the president and deputy in 2012, is that the constitution says itself, unless someone is convicted, there's nothing you can do to them if they are elected.
All right, I'll be out of order because I'm out of time, but Mutula, really quick as we wrap this up.
Let me say that from a constitutional perspective, it appears a little untidy for the president to appear powerless as the chief executive officer of the country, because the constitution gives him immense powers to dismiss, and he actually dismissed the chaser without giving any reason. And what stops the president from removing and dismissing person X based on information that Otiende Amolo is talking about, and they X that person is charged in court as a normal Kenyan, so that then there's no question of stepping aside, because we must get to a place in this country where integrity counts for something. Means where in the modern world, and we are attempting to become a modern world, somebody dies on a train and you're a cabinet secretary, you resign, yet you are not the driver of that train. It's about integrity. It's about taking political accountability. What the president did not address, he addressed legal responsibility, which in fact he doesn't need to come to parliament to tell us that he has to follow the rule of law or this and the other. Who takes political responsibility when a county is pilfered almost to the ground, and then you say, since I have not been convicted, I can continue running office?
Well, I'm sure, gentlemen, that everyone prays that we get to that point of integrity, because we are far from it. But gentlemen, sorry to cut you short. We have to end it here, but the conversation continues. Something that many people said should have been mentioned, at least in honor of those who've been lost in the food crisis situation in many counties, is that issue itself. No mention of the dire situation or what is going to be done to help people in about 14 counties in this country that are facing the drought situation currently because of the delayed rains. Well, we've heard views from some of the members of parliament. Now we need to get more views from the people that they come to represent. That is on the various issues that they followed through in the State of the Nation address.
Tumeridhika nayo kabisa, sababu ameaddress mambo ya corruption.
Tunataka kuona maendeleo, sio kusikiza tu kuna agendas. Just appreciating there is corruption, but what next? So we have not been seeing action in the recent past.
Tunasikia anasema economy imeimprove, na sisi wenyewe watu wa jua kali hata tangu asubuhi, angalia vile mkono yangu iko. You have not worked.
Watu wako na shida mingi, bado tunaona kuna njaa kama counties 8. Kwa hivyo sioni hii uchumi ina grow namna gani, ilhali
kuunganisha watu wa Kenya kukaa pamoja. Na mambo ya corruption nimemuunga kwa sababu amepigania mambo ya corruption 100%.
Sana vile hii handshake imefanyika, Wakenya wote wako mbele kupigana na ufisadi.
Wanasema mbolea iko, lakini wakati ambaye tunaona kwamba hakuna mbolea, tunataka watusaidie kama wananchi, kwa sababu tukitaka hii mambo ya hanga ya njaa ikwishe, lazima serikali ichukue majukumu ya kutoa mbolea, mbegu kwa wananchi.
So president anatakana awajibike. Kama mtu ametajwa na skando yoyote, kama amekataa kustep aside yeye mwenyewe, basi rais achukue jukumu la kumwambia step aside.
Penda atoe kazi kwa vijana, asaidie wale ambao wako na shida zaidi, na ateremshe chini unga.
Juu ya ufisadi, ikisika mtu ipelekwe kwa mahakamani haraka haraka. Tunaumia na tumeumia, tunatafuta shilingi 5 na tuwezi kupata. Hao wameiba pesa ya Kenya, wameficha pesa chini ya kitanda kabisa kwa bedroom. Tunataka ukweli toke ukweli.
And back to a story that we aired earlier by Silas Apollo actually. Trouble looms for thousands of graduates who have been helping lazy university students from developed countries to cheat academically. This is after the UK government started clamping down on essay mills. In your copy of the Daily Nation tomorrow, read about the measures the UK government is taking and the ramifications in Kenya. Don't miss your copy. Make sure you get that. And of course, it'll have a lot of the highlights of the day's State of the Nation address. Up next is The Business with Dan Mwangi. That's after the break. Stay with us.
Good evening and welcome to NTV Business. I'm Dan Mwangi. We stay on the State of the Nation address, and the government expects the economy to expand by 6.3% in 2019, a slight gain from the 6.1% estimated for the year 2018. In his State of the Nation address, President Uhuru Kenyatta said the wholesale and manufacturing sectors will be key drivers of this growth. Julian Samboko with more.
In his annual stocktake of the state of the economy, President Kenyatta was on a strikingly optimistic note, touting the state of the economy as robust and resilient. In particular, the president cited the general slowdown in inflation and a stable foreign exchange environment as indicators of a sound policy environment which should support growth in 2019.
2018, economic growth was largely driven by the wholesale and retail trade, real estate, information and communication, and tourism.
When you look at the fundamentals, particularly the current account deficit, we've seen it narrowing from a year-on-year basis, and rightfully so because of the diaspora remittances, and also oil prices coming off significantly.
The State of the Nation address dealt with a raft of issues on the economic environment, including inflation, the shilling, and the wider business climate. One issue that was scarcely touched, however, was the question of public debt, which has been a matter of growing concern over the last 2 years.
The public debt now stands at about 5.3 trillion shillings, and with the $500 million 2014 Eurobond set to mature in June this year, there has been a rising concern over Kenya's planned borrowing to settle the debt. It is, however, viewed that Kenya's position remains broadly favorable from a debt position.
We are relatively optimistic regarding Kenya's ability to meet its external debt obligations. When we look at the FX reserves, for example, they are comfortably above $8 billion, 5 months of import cover, above the EAC, East Africa criterion of about 4 months of import cover. So we're in a comfortable place to be able to service the debt.
With the State of the Nation complete, small and micro businesses now await implementation of the promised credit guarantee scheme aimed at supporting their access to credit, especially as the future of the cap on interest rates remains unclear. Julians Amboko, NTV.
Still on the State of the Nation, and sugar and maize farmers are set to get relief following the government's announcement that it will act on the recommendations of the 2 sectoral task forces whose findings are slated to be released later this month. Speaking during the State of the Nation today, President Uhuru Kenyatta said that the findings of the government-initiated task forces are set to address the challenges bedeviling the 2 subsectors that have seen farmers record dwindling fortunes. President Kenyatta said that the government is keen on offering incentives to farmers, pointing out the reforms the government recently undertook to boost the struggling coffee sector.
Additionally, my administration has prioritized reforms in the coffee subsector and implemented numerous interventions emanating from the recommendations of the Coffee Task Force. These include the ambitious rehabilitation of 500 pulping stations in 31 coffee-growing counties. Mr. Speaker, with a view to comprehensively resolve the problem of undue delays in the payment cycle, we have also set up a 3 billion Cherry Advance Revolving Fund to be operational from July 1, 2019.
Lack of awareness and negative perception on quality have been identified as some of the factors hampering growth of Kenya's manufacturing industry and consumption. Vidyarthi visited the exhibition stands at the expo and now highlights the opportunities and challenges at the heart of the country's budding manufacturing sector.
On the second day of the 3rd Kenya Association of Manufacturers Summit and Expo, hundreds of Kenyans continue to throng the Kasarani Stadium to view and buy locally made products. From food and beverages, building and construction, textile and apparel to agrochemicals, buyers give Kenyan products a clean bill of health on quality and affordability.
We came here today to just do some shopping, but overall it has been okay because the prices are affordable and anyone can come here and shop.
They are very high quality products, especially the clothing that I've seen over there. They are products that basically match the global products that we are getting from the developed countries.
So why are Kenyans just not buying more locally made products?
I would say it's a problem of awareness. There are many people who are doing organic products in our country right now, but access to market has been an issue. And that's why we are happy that CAM is celebrating the local manufacturer. So we're able to get access to market and to show Kenyans that we have our own products which are cheaper and actually safer to use than the cosmetics that we get from abroad.
Hatupati market sana. Juu kuna import mingi, zenye ziko cheap, but zetu, our quality is very high. Sasa challenges ni, we have to buy Kenya, build Kenya, ndio nchi yetu ikue mbele.
Kenya's trade deficit currently stands at over 1 trillion shillings, pushed by increased imports, including those of products such as toothpicks that the country can easily produce locally. Victor Kiprop, NTV Business.
Kenyan small and medium enterprises, or SMEs, are set to benefit from financing and access to international markets following the establishment of a trade development hub in the country. The Trade for Sustainable Development Hub, fronted by the International Trade Center, is also set to capacitate local SMEs with tools to comply with standards such as fair trade that have seen them get shunned by international buyers. The hub, based at the Strathmore University, has also been dubbed as a one-stop shop for SMEs to build sustainable business strategies around issues such as climate change, adaptation, and all facets of the circular economy.
We're looking at SMEs that are export ready or near export readiness, that are in the processing level in these different sectors, whether it's tea, whether it's garments and apparel, that have an understanding of sustainability, that believe and want to internalize more sustainable production processes in their operations, that are willing to commit to working through us through the coaching process with us over a period of 11-12 months this year and then also next year.
Mark and Smriti join you with more on the other side. That's at Parliament. After this break, business is done. I am Wangi. Good night.
Welcome back from parliamentary buildings here and to a story that also developed today, and we spoke about it with the panel a bit. Samburu County Governor Moses Lenol Kulal has been released after paying a cash bail of 10 million shillings.
The governor was being held at the industrial area remand prison, but as Lenol Kulal walked out of remand, Chief Magistrate Douglas Ogoti disqualified himself from hearing the case after defense lawyers complained of bias.
NTV's Sharon Baranga reports.
Moses Lenol Kulal, the governor of Samburu County, had to dig deep into his pockets to secure his release. He paid a cash bail of 10 million shillings, an amount that had been slashed from the previous 100 million shillings. The governor waxing political as he tasted freedom.
I can assure you, we'll come out of this more stronger. The truth will come out, and everybody will get to see for themselves.
Governor Lenol Kulal was in custody at the Industrial Area Remand Prison. On Wednesday, High Court Judge Mumbi Ngugi slashed his bond from 150 million shillings to 30 million shillings with a surety of a similar amount. Lenol Kulal's release on bail coincided with Chief Magistrate Douglas Ogoti's move to disqualify himself from hearing the case after defense lawyers complained of bias. The lawyers led by Paul Nyamodi took issue with the magistrate over an interview he gave to one of the newspapers. In his defense, the magistrate in his ruling said he had no interest in the matter and neither did he have any relations with the accused. Lenol Kulal is accused of irregularly obtaining 84.7 million shillings by supplying fuel to the Samburu County government through his company Oryx Service Station. The transactions were apparently carried out between 27th March 2013 and 25th March 2019. On Tuesday this week, the Anti-Corruption Court had set a cash bail of 100 million shillings or 150 million shillings bond after the governor denied charges of corruption and abuse of office. Sharon Baranga, NTV.
And on to another issue that has been quite contentious, and that is the Huduma number, where people have been asking questions about the rollout of the National Integrated Identity Management System. And it has entered its second day, though on a slow pace.
Well, so far, about 170,000 Kenyans have been digitally registered into the system, according to President Kenyatta, though that number differs with the 150,000 figure put forward by the Interior PS Karanja Kibicho.
The Kenya Human Rights Commission and other opponents of the exercise have continued to urge Kenyans to opt out of the process until its legality and constitutionality are fully determined.
Eunice Omolo reports.
Very happy.
Long lines at Huduma number registration centers on the second day of the exercise in various points in the country. The process has been slow and the government attributes it to poor network and internet, slow grip of the technology know-how among registration assistants. The glitches come amidst protests from those who oppose the exercise and who accuse the government of contravening court orders made in a ruling on the 1st of April. The Kenya Human Rights Commission, the Nubian Forum, among other rights groups, have been up in arms calling for the exercise to be stopped. They allege the government has been in contempt of court by forcing Kenyans to register.
We are receiving worrying reports about threats to withhold salaries and other benefits to members of the public for exercising their legal right to boycott this exercise. We urge Kenyans to opt out of this exercise. We remind Kenyans that they have the right to choose to opt out until such a time that the court will rule on its legality and constitutionality.
Speaking in Nairobi today, Interior PS Karanja Kibisho refuted the claim, stating that the process was being done in a voluntary manner.
No Kenyan who is being forced to register. And I would want one who has been forced to raise their hand, because there isn't. We have no reason to. The Huduma number project is about service. We want service to become convenient to a person. We want you to drop the bag of cards that you are carrying when you are looking for services into one card. But should a Kenyan decide they don't want that convenient, it's their choice.
The ICT Ministry also reiterated security concerns raised by the ongoing exercise.
Secondly, without doubt, the database is resident within this country, and we have actually even put up multiple databases for the purposes of security with the proper redundancy to ensure that our information is secure.
The mass registration exercise will go on for 45 days, after which Kenyans who wish to register for the Huduma number will be doing so in assistant chiefs' offices of the respective sub-locations. The process is yet to kick off in Lamu, Kwale, Tana River and Kisumu. However, compensation through extension of days will be factored in. Eunice Omolo, NTV, Nairobi.
Now to something that would raise your spirits, and because you stand a chance to win as well. But today it was Roselyn Wanyoike who is the first lucky winner of a trip to Mombasa, thanks to the NTV Watch and Win competition.
Well, she is one of 6 winners who received prizes, which include televisions and shopping vouchers as well.
Roselyn Wanyoike is the first winner of an all-paid holiday to Mombasa. All she had to do was watch her favorite channel, NTV.
Nilikuwa nimelala, kanipigia, kwambia tu ni uongo, kaamini jioni wakati niliona kwa TV. Nilifurahi sana.
5 other winners won TV sets and shopping vouchers.
Nafurahi sana na nitaendelea kuwatch. Na naambia watu wote waendelee kuwatch NTV.
The winners correctly answered pop-up questions to 20686 at random times of the day. The competition will run for 45 days.
Just, yes, the people have won. It's a package a flying package going to Mombasa for 3 days. But ziko mingi. So I'm sure people should be tuned, people should tune in and they'll be able to win more.
We shall continue partnering, and as Bonfire has just stated, this is just the beginning. There's a lot more coming our way, and we are going to extend this partnership.
The grand prize is a 4-night holiday for 2 in Dubai. Helen Aura, NTV.
Well, congratulations to Roselyn, and may they have a good time there for their trip. And from a very freezing area within the precincts of the parliamentary buildings, we have to take a break now.
We certainly do, and it is the sports news that's coming up after this break. Mark, you're laughing at me. I know you warned me that it would be cold, and there's no denying that it is really cold. I won't even hide it. All right, so we will be back just shortly after the sports news.
Now, Deputy President William Ruto this evening hosted the national cross-country team at his residence in Karen. Kenya finished second at the World Cross-Country Championships in Aarhus in Denmark, and that was behind eternal rivals Ethiopia in the overall rankings. A disappointing result compared to the previous editions. In the biannual championships, Helen Obiri and Beatrice Chebet were the only gold medalists in the event, winning in the senior and junior women's races. There was disappointment, of course, in the men's race, the senior men's race, as Kenya's Jeffrey Kamworo finished third behind Uganda's Joshua Cheptegei. The national football team Harambee Stars plan to camp in France ahead of its 2019 Africa Cup of Nations campaign, and that may fall apart due to the Ministry of Sports not availing the necessary funds as earlier promised.
Kwa sababu ikipita tena hii wiki kama hizo fedha hakuna, tunaweza kupoteza ile kambi. Nakumbuka tulisema kwamba tunataka kumpatia kocha kila kitu anachotaka. Na hiyo kocha mwenyewe ndo ameitisha. Tukikosa kumpa basi wajua vile atasema. Atasema tu kumpa kila kitu ingetakikana kumpa. Kwa hivyo tunauliza tena tu hizi fedha zipatikane haraka. Nishasaini kandarasi zote. Pesa ndio sijalipa. Nimeshapitisha deadline nilizopewa. Kwa hivyo hata wakipatia nchi nyingine siwezi kusema chochote kwa sababu sikulipa. Kwa hivyo naenda kutana naye sasa hivi tena nisikie tumefikia wapi, kwa sababu hizi fedha zimekwama sasa vile unajua miezi 2 miezi 3, na inaumiza zaidi upande wa kupanga.
The national football team Harambee Stars has dropped 2 places in the latest FIFA rankings to now lie in position 108. Senegal is the highest ranked team in Africa at position 23, while Belgium, France and Brazil remain in the first 3 positions. Regarding the Kenyan Premier League, Kariobangi Sharks drew 1-1 with Zoo Kericho as Eric Kapaito's early opener was cancelled by Kelvin Omondi, and that was at the Kenyatta Stadium in Machakos. At the same grounds, Sofapaka and Vihiga also drew 1-1 as AFC Leopards beat Chemelil Sugar FC 2-0 to climb to 12th on the log with 23 points. At the Sudi grounds, hosts Nzoia Sugar FC and Poster Rangers played out a barren draw. The national sevens women's rugby team will face Argentina in the quarterfinals of the Hong Kong Sevens, and that's at 5 a.m. Tomorrow morning. The Kenya Lionesses sailed into the quarters on a 100% win record at the World Sevens Series Women's Qualifier after beating Papua New Guinea 20-10 in their last group game. Earlier, Kenya had thrashed hosts Hong Kong 36 points to 5 and crushed neighbours Uganda Cranes 24-0. Meanwhile, the national sevens men's team will be in action tomorrow in the Hong Kong Sevens as it seeks to move from the World Rugby Series relegation zone. Shujaa under coach Paul Marunga are in a tough Pool C against Fiji, New Zealand and Australia. Hosts Kenya will meet defending champions Namibia in the final of the Bartes Cup, the under-20 rugby tournament, and that's on Sunday, with the winner bagging a ticket to the 2019 Junior World Rugby Trophy in Brazil. Sunday's final at KCB's Den in Ruaraka will be curtain raised by Senegal taking on Tunisia, with the loser dropping to Pool B. The national under-20 rugby team stormed into the final of the Africa Rugby Bartes Cup by thrashing Tunisia 73-0 at the KCB Sports Club in Ruaraka. Chipu scored 11 tries, 9 of which were converted by fly half Dominic Coulson. Winger Bildad Ogeta scored 3 tries, with the KCB duo of Jeff Okwach and George Maranga scoring 2 tries each.
This is the least time we've had to prepare with this particular age group. And for them to produce a performance where they score over 70 points, which is our highest score in 5 seasons, is fantastic.
We have worked hard, we deserve this, and we are on to the final, We expected all this.
So in the end, it was a big win for Kenya, a much bigger margin than people expected. However, on Sunday, Namibia will be much tougher competition. Following the victory, Kenya sets up a repeat final with Namibia on Sunday at 4 p.m. Namibia crushed Senegal 45 points to 12.
Namibia are very organized as always, really physical. They finished very strongly, so their bench is also one of their strong points.
The winner between Kenya and Namibia will qualify for the 2019 Junior World Rugby Trophy in Brazil. The loser of the match between Senegal and Tunisia that will be played before the Cup final will be relegated to Group B. And that's it for the latest sports news. Back to you, Mark and Smriti at Parliament Buildings.
Yeah, you sound excited, Sean, about us being at Parliament Buildings, but I'll tell you right now, we're not that excited about being here over a bit, maybe 2 hours now with this cold though. But we've had a good bulletin, and thank you for watching. My name is Mark Masai. Have a good night.
Thanks to David Agondoa, our sign language interpreter. Thanks to you for watching, and Mark, thank you for your jacket. It was just too cold to take off. All right, and we'll be back again. Of course, more news coming your way tomorrow. Have yourselves a good night.